You've seen it so many times throughout this series, me and my cousins opening up some of our most beloved video games on Christmas morning. We got a ton of incredible games over the years throughout our childhood, but there were some games that we opened up on Christmas morning that might as well have been a lump of coal. Santa must not have been having a holly jolly Christmas when he placed these turds under my tree, and I feel like it's time to revisit some of these ghosts of Christmas past. Let's start with number 10.
Mario is missing.
Mario is missing.
Well, now you found him.
But first, a word about this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access. Here in America, we just celebrated Thanksgiving. Naturally, it was a time for turkey, family, and friends. You know, the 90s hit TV show Friends. And we would watch them on Netflix, but here in the States, Friends is only available on Max. Luckily, we've got a friend in Private Internet Access. Private Internet Access is a VPN that swaps the real location of your device with a new one. Like, say, the UK, where Friends is available on Netflix for your holiday viewing pleasure. And with New Year's around the corner, you can ring in 2024 with Monica and Ross, and you won't even have to perform a dance-off. Private Internet Access has you covered. And it's not just Friends. There's a ton of content that you have access to using a VPN like Private Internet Access.
There are servers in 91 countries to choose from and all 50 states. Plus, Private Internet Access is available on all major platforms, including Windows, Android, Mac OS, Linux, and iOS. One subscription covers an unlimited amount of devices. Plus, there's a 30-day money-back guarantee and 24/7 customer support.
Use the link in the description and you can grab an 83% discount on Private Internet Access. That's just $2.03 a month. And you also get 4 extra months completely free in a 2-year plan. Private Internet Access wants to help you out this holiday season. What are friends for?
Coming in at number 10, it's Roston Saga 2 on the Sega Genesis. Now, this game was actually a part of the incredible Sega Games Hall on Christmas 1994, and you have all seen that video. That is one of the most legendary game hauls I ever had as a kid. Oh my gosh, so many games that we got that Christmas morning, and one of them, unfortunately, was
Roston Saga 2!
They couldn't all be great. Nope, Roston Saga 2 stunk up the place that morning. And really, we thought this was going to be a great game. We'd played the original Roston in the arcades. It was a very popular arcade game that a lot of people love. And to this day, it's some of my friends' favorite video games. Roston Saga 2, the sequel, is so bad, my friends. It's just, it feels like the game wasn't even developed by the same team that made the original game. And you kind of realize as you play through this game that you're sort of torturing yourself with tedium. It's just a real ugly game, and we realized this within hours of playing the game. You know, first playing it really probably within minutes. You got to understand, we had played these kind of medieval barbarian action platformer games like Golden Axe, you know, on the Sega Genesis, and I think we were expecting something like that. When you used to look at the magazines and see the back of the box too, you'd see just still frames of the game. You wouldn't see it in motion. And this is one of those cases where if we had seen the game in motion, I think we would have avoided it like the plague. But as it stands, we took a chance, or I guess Dad took a chance for me on Christmas morning. Got the game pre-owned. This was a pre-owned game. A lot of those games on Christmas morning 1994 were used games. I think a lot of you don't realize that, actually. And Roston Saga 2, man, such a bad game. I say avoid this one at all costs. Coming in at number 9, it's Death Crimson 2 on the Sega Dreamcast. Now, specifically, we had the Japanese import of this game. I got it on Christmas morning, 1999, when I was visiting my cousins and the rest of my family in New York. That was a very fun Christmas. Oh my gosh, it was a Dreamcast Christmas. I got tons of Dreamcast games for Christmas that year, most of them being Japanese imports. There was a game that disappointed like no other, and that was Death Crimson 2. Now, I really wanted to love this game because everything we saw in the magazines or online, again, those still frames, it made it seem like this was another House of the Dead kind of game. And so here was another light gun zombie/monster horror game that we just thought, oh, well, it's on the Dreamcast. It's going to run awesome. It's going to be great. Boy, was I wrong, man. This is a choppy, disgusting looking game. That sounds harsh, right? But it looks terrible, guys. It looks like it could have been made on the PlayStation 1, or Sega Saturn. Maybe with slightly better textures and visuals, but it felt like a generation before what we were getting on the Dreamcast that year in 1999. It didn't look anything like how House of the Dead 2 ran, and that's really what I was comparing it to. That was the major thing, and it was the big roadblock for me. This game did have an interesting story mode, but it was completely in Japanese, and it was so hard for me to understand anything of what was going on in the story. I just wanted to get to the light gun portions. Overall, I had such a horrible time playing this game. It's very weird, very bizarre, and there was even a third game in the series that was released in America on the Dreamcast called Death Crimson OX. I never played that one because, man, I wanted to be as far away from the Death Crimson series as I possibly could, and I feel like you should too. Coming in at number 8, well, it's 8 Eyes on the NES. Oh boy, 8 Eyes. Where do I begin with 8 Eyes? Okay, so 8 Eyes on the NES, guys, is a terrible, terrible, clunky game. I'm sure it has its fans, but I don't know why. Honestly, this was a very cryptic game that I really tried so hard to get into as a kid. I owned Castlevania 3, and so seeing this game, you felt like, we're probably going to get more of that. It looked and played a lot like Castlevania. The staircases, the look of the game. A lot of people consider 8 Eyes a Castlevania clone, and what you got is a very clunky, stiff, hard to control platformer that's extremely hard. Now, one thing I always liked about 8 Eyes is that you can choose your stage. Any stage is unlockable at the very beginning. It's kind of like Mega Man and the Robot Masters, but instead of Robot Masters, you're choosing which country to go to and visit this castle or manor. There's all sorts of different stages, and they look cool. They look very spooky and have that Castlevania vibe. But oh, how I feel for the kids who got this game on Christmas morning hoping for something half as good as Castlevania. But what they ended up with was 8 Eyes. I was one of those kids. I got it on Christmas morning. Santa came through. He didn't disappoint. Until I played the game and realized, Santa, why did you give me this piece of junk? Oh gosh, it's terrible. If you really cared about me, Santa, you never would have given it to me. Still can't wash out the bad taste of that game.
At number 7, it's Roadrunner's Death Valley Rally
on the Super Nintendo. I got this game Christmas 1992. For all intents and purposes, we really thought this was going to be an awesome game. It had been featured on the cover of Nintendo Power, which was a magazine that we subscribed to. We got all of our video game and Nintendo game news. Within minutes of playing the game, you start realizing that it's very hard to control and very unforgiving. It's incredibly difficult and frustrating. You're running around as fast as Sonic the Hedgehog ran in the original Sega Genesis game, and that was a game, Christmas 1992, we already had Sonic the Hedgehog 2 at this point, so we were well experienced in fast-paced running games, and Death Valley Rally even tries to do some Sonic the Hedgehog type of gameplay with its sort of loops and stuff like that, but really it just fails on all levels. It's incredibly hard to control, and really there's no continues. There's no continues at all. Once you lose all your lives, you're dead, game over. You got to start over at the beginning. No password system. It's incredibly unforgiving, and it was very disappointing for me when I got it on Christmas. Not when I first got it. When I first got it, I hadn't played it yet, so I thought it was great. But then I played it. Coming in at number 6, it's Ghost Manor on the TurboGrafx-16. Now, this one was quite a disappointment. When I got it, Christmas 1996, I had all the hope in the world based on the cover art alone. Another big failure for us kids growing up in the 90s with these games was judging the book by its cover. Ghost Manor was one of those games. I think a lot of platformers fail when the first stage is not a left to right side-scrolling affair. No, this one, you're actually having to go up this sort of, I don't know, it's like a giant wall that you got to climb to get to the top where the entrance to the Ghost Manor is. Well, good luck ever getting to the top of this wall because, oh my gosh, it's unforgiving. And you don't know what to do. It's like I spent hours just running around, letting those ghosts kind of lift me up. There's like this moment where you have to stand in a certain position and the ghost comes up from beneath you and carries you up. And then you have to land on the correct platform and figure out what you're doing. It's just not fun at all. It's so frustrating. There's nothing fun about the first stage. And man, you want to have fun on the first stage of a game, you know? I never got much further than the first stage in this game just because of how difficult and how frustrating it is. It was not even worth my time trying to punish myself to get any further. If you like Ghost Manor and maybe you've played more of the game and have gotten further into it, maybe let me know why, because I don't get it. At number 5, it's Surf Ninjas on the Sega Game Gear. Surf's up, dude. That's right. Back in the day, back in the radical 90s, early 90s, we were all about ninjas and kicking butt, man. I mean, you had Ninja Turtles, you had Three Ninjas, and then you had, well, Surf Ninjas, like Surf's Up, man, Cowabunga, and all that. That's the way we felt back then as kids growing up in the early 90s. We were all about ninjas. And I was one of those kids that I loved Surf Ninjas. I got the movie on video, and I can't remember if it was on VHS or Laserdisc. And so I thought it was so cool. And I thought, oh man, if I get the Game Gear game, it's going to be that same Game Gear game he was playing in the movie. And I thought, how cool is that? I'll be able to play the game he was playing. And no, it's not the same game at all. In fact, this is a very clunky, boring, side-scrolling action game that is slow-moving. It controls horribly. Surf Ninjas on the Game Gear is just a poor man's Ninja Gaiden or Shinobi. I mean, really, I wouldn't even call it that. It's so bad in its clunky gameplay that I never even really played it much. I put the game on my Christmas list that year in 1994, and maybe in a twist of my dad realizing this was not a good game, he didn't buy it for me. He probably said, I'm not buying him that game. Let his grandmother buy it for him. And so my great-grandmother, Mamaw, she got me Surf Ninjas on the Game Gear. No doubt my dad bought it and they just wrapped it from her. Maybe she gave them the money or something like that. But really, guys, I say avoid this game. I probably got no further than stage 2 or 3 before I just abandoned all hope. Oh, that was a lesson in don't judge a video game inside a movie based on the movie that is portraying the video game inside the movie. I think I got a headache now. Coming in at number 4, it's Bubsy 3D on the Sony PlayStation. Oh, here we go. Back to Christmas 1996. And lo and behold, Dad swallows his pride and buys me Bubsy 3D. And my reaction to this game is probably the greatest reaction ever in the history of all mankind to a kid receiving Bubsy 3D.
Bubsy 3D! Yes,
I mean, I just really wanted to love this game, and you can even see me playing it on Christmas morning, and my dad's like, you're enjoying this game? You really like this game? He knew it was a bad game. And I've done a video on this game before and me getting it that Christmas morning. It was one of the earlier videos on this channel. You can go check it out. But I got to just reiterate what I said. I really liked it at the time. And at the time, it was a 3D platformer, which was incredibly hard to come by, and really it was new technology. It was this new frontier in gaming. I think I was happy to have Bubsy 3D, and I enjoyed it for a little bit, but I recognize it as a bad game. It just controls horribly. It's got the worst kind of tank controls, and for a 3D platformer, like it's unheard of. Super Mario 64 was already doing it so much better. Oh my gosh, with the analog stick, and here you had Bubsy. They wanted it to be a great game. They wanted it to be revolutionary because it was in development right around the same time as Super Mario 64. But not only did it get out of the gate late and arrive on store shelves months after Mario 64, it looked nothing like Mario 64 as far as performance. And if Bubsy 3D had come out a year before Super Mario 64, I think we would be talking about it in a completely different light. It was trying to do things that were brand new to video games, just like Super Mario 64. But, when it came out, and by the time it came out months after Mario 64, it just looked horrible. And that's why I think to this day we have a very bad impression of the game. It's, it has its charms. It has its okay things. There's still a lot of nostalgia I have for it, but it's a bad game. Coming in at number 3, it's Torico: The Last Hope on the PlayStation 1. The original PlayStation, an RPG game that I got from my Aunt Michelle, Uncle Mike, and Manny and Mikey in New York. This one's interesting because at the time I had told my Aunt Michelle and my cousins that I wanted more role-playing games. They were the family members I turned to for my role-playing game guidance and advice. When it came to getting role-playing games, I was always talking to them. And so I said for Christmas 2000, I said, surprise me, get me a role-playing game. That was what I asked for. And so they did. They surprised me with Torico: The Last Hope.
The Last Hope.
Now, this is a game that is steeped in the Dragon Quest series. It's like a spin-off. I knew nothing about Dragon Quest other than watching my cousin Mikey play the original Dragon Warrior game when we were small kids. I would watch him play it on the NES, but just jumping into the Dragon Warrior series or Dragon Quest series with Torico: The Last Hope, it was a bad idea. I think she had the best of intentions, but I really did not end up liking this game. I'm sorry, Aunt Michelle. If you're watching this now, you never knew how I actually felt about this game. I never told you. I'm so sorry. I did not like Torico: The Last Hope. I really didn't. I know you wanted me to. It's a dungeon crawler. It's very repetitive. And to this day, I even hear from other people saying, you know what, that's really not a good game. Like, that is not a good game. It wasn't a good one for you to try to warm up to more role-playing games. Maybe Mikey really liked it and thought I would like it, but I don't know. Maybe I should give it another shot. You guys let me know in the comments if maybe my Aunt Michelle was onto something and I owe it to her to give it another try. And coming in at number 2, we're going to go all the way back to the very first Christmas I ever had video games. And we're going to talk about the very first video game I ever got in my life. And that is Ghostbusters on the Nintendo Entertainment System.
Look! Ghostbuster game! Nintendo! Yeah.
Okay, so isn't it crazy that the very first game I ever get in my entire life that I ever own is one of the worst games I ever owned? and that's Ghostbusters. Oh man, I was such a big fan of Ghostbusters in those early days, and you've seen it in the video footage. I've done episodes all about my love of Ghostbusters when I was a little kid, and to this day it's one of my favorite movies. So the whole reason why I even got a Nintendo for Christmas 1989 was because I wanted Ghostbusters. I wanted the game. I had played this game at my neighbor's house. There were these boys that were older than me that owned both a Sega Master System and a Nintendo Entertainment System. And they had Ghostbusters on the Sega Master System. Well, my dad decided to get me an NES instead of a Master System after he learned that the Master System was going to be discontinued. What he didn't realize is that the Master System version of Ghostbusters is infinitely better than the terrible version of Ghostbusters we got on the NES. Oh my gosh, this is the classic David Crane Ghostbusters game that was released on just about every single video game console and computer, home computer that we had back then in the late 80s. And man, did I get the raw end of this deal, because I had played the Master System version, which is by far like the best version of the game. And instead of getting the best version, we got the worst version. The graphics look horrible in this game. They look like they could be running on an Atari 2600 at times. I mean, guys, this was so bad, and it played just as bad. I mean, trying to navigate the Ghostbusters logo around the blocky screen, you can't tell what anything is on that screen or what you're even supposed to be doing. The graphics are so bad that it makes it hard to understand where you're going and what you're doing. And oh my gosh, this was such a bad game. And so many people were introduced to this game through the NES, because all of us kids in America were going nuts over NES and Ghostbusters around this time. And so I can't be the only kid that woke up on Christmas morning with a Nintendo and Ghostbusters. It wasn't until years later that I got the Master System game and got to relive those memories of playing that version with my friends next door who had it, the much superior version of the game. And all of a sudden it became a great game. For the longest time, I remembered it as a bad game because of that NES version that we got on Christmas. Oh man, but now Ghostbusters on the Master System and other home computers is actually a pretty good game and a lot of fun and very true to the movie. But the NES game, oh, it's bad, guys. Avoid it. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for getting me my Nintendo and starting this entire lifetime of loving video games. It's a wonder that I ever continued loving video games, because my first video game ever was Ghostbusters on the NES. Ugh. Coming in at number 1, it's F16 Fighting Falcon on the Sega Master System. This is one of the worst games I've ever played in my life, and it's not that it's not trying, okay? Like, it's a flight simulator game. It's just horrible in every way, shape, and form. By far the worst Master System game ever released. And it's just one of these games, it came out on the Sega card. And F16 Fighting Falcon, I remember getting this on Christmas morning 1998. Santa Claus, quote unquote, had surprised me with a bunch of retro games, including a bunch of Atari 7800 games, and also a few Master System games. And right there in the middle, you see it right now, is F16 Fighting Falcon. And oh, we didn't know it at the time, but man, this was going to become a game that I would consider one of the worst games ever made. Dad felt the same way. It was one of these things of like, okay, we've basically collected this game, and that's the only reason we have it. The only reason we even give it any time of day is just to add it to our Master System collection, because it's just garbage. It plays like garbage. It's there was a lot of flight simulator games on PCs at the time, computers, And trying to bring that over to home consoles was no small feat, and Sega did not succeed here at all. The game just looks awful, and it plays awful too. Half the time I'm trying to fly around, I don't know if I'm even moving. Like, it's so stiff and slow, and all you hear is just that engine of the plane, and it's almost like worthless. I feel like the game is not worth any time of your life at all. So let this be a public service announcement. Please, if you or your loved one ever come in contact with F16 Fighting Falcon on the Sega Master System, do your best to find the perfect ointment and or antidote to this terrible game. I suggest Contra or Castlevania or Mega Man or just about any game. It's going to be better than F16 Fighting Falcon. Well, that's it, guys. Thank you so much for walking down memory lane here with me. As tough as it was to maybe relive some of these games, I think it's really funny that mixed in with all these amazing Christmas moments with video games are these little terrible, horrible lumps of coal in cartridge form. But hey, you know what? One man's lump of video game cartridge coal is another man's treasure? I don't know. No, Gunstar Heroes by Treasure is so much better. Anything by Treasure is a million times better than anything that was on this list. I'm rambling now, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas, an amazing Christmas, and I hope that the video games that you guys receive on Christmas from either Santa or your loved ones, I hope they are far from anything you encountered on this list. All right, I'm Tyler. Merry Christmas, guys. I'll see you next time.